The wife and daughter abandoned the man with terminal cancer. Years later, they returned for the inheritance and were surprised by the unexpected turn of life. Sunlight filtered through the hospital curtains, illuminating the pale figure of Jack Thompson. At 45, this successful businessman was fighting cancer that threatened to take everything from him. However, it wasn't the disease that hurt him the most at that moment, but the absence of the two women he loved most in the world, his wife Sarah and his daughter Emily. Jack vividly remembered the day he was diagnosed with cancer. Sarah, a woman of stunning beauty and unbridled ambition, had turned pale upon hearing the news. His daughter Emily, then a 15-year-old teenager, had cried inconsolably. At that moment, Jack believed they would face this battle together. How wrong he was. As the treatments intensified and Jack weakened, he noticed how Sarah and Emily became increasingly distant. Hospital visits became less frequent, phone calls shorter, excuses more elaborate. Jack clung to the hope that it was just a phase, that his loved ones would return to his side when he needed them most. But that hope vanished on a rainy April afternoon. Jack, weakened by chemotherapy, received a visit from his lawyer and friend, Michael Roberts. "Jack, I'm so sorry, but I have to inform you of something," said Michael with an expression of sorrow on his face. "Sarah has emptied the joint bank accounts and transferred a considerable sum to an account abroad." Jack felt as if he'd been punched in the stomach. "What are you saying, Michael? There must be a mistake." Michael shook his head. "I'm afraid that's not all. She's filed for divorce and is asking for full custody of Emily." At that moment, Jack understood the magnitude of the betrayal. Not only were they abandoning him at his most vulnerable moment, but they were also trying to strip him of everything he had built. "Where are they now?" Jack asked, his voice barely a whisper. "According to my sources, they took a flight to Europe this morning. I'm sorry, friend." Jack closed his eyes, feeling tears starting to well up. His whole world was crumbling around him. The love of his life, the woman he had shared 20 years with, had betrayed him in the cruelest way. And his daughter, his little Emily, had left without even saying goodbye. In the midst of his pain, Jack didn't notice the presence of a young nurse who had silently entered the room. Rachel Adams, 30 years old, observed the scene with a mixture of compassion and concern. She had been caring for Jack for the past few weeks and had developed a special affection for this patient, who always maintained a smile despite his suffering. "Mr. Thompson, are you all right?" Rachel asked, approaching the bed. Jack opened his eyes, meeting Rachel's warm gaze. For a moment he felt a glimmer of comfort in the midst of his turmoil. "No, Rachel." "Nothing is all right," he responded, his voice breaking. Rachel gently took his hand. "I'm here for you, Mr. Thompson. You're not alone in this." Those words, though simple, were like a balm for Jack's wounded heart. At that instant, something changed within him. While the pain of betrayal was immense, a spark of determination ignited inside him. "Thank you, Rachel," said Jack, gently squeezing the nurse's hand. "You're right, I'm not alone, and I promise you that I'm going to fight. I'm going to beat this cancer and rebuild my life." Michael, who had remained silent, approached his friend. "Count on me for whatever you need, Jack. We're going to fight this together." As the sun began to set on the horizon, Jack Thompson made a decision that would change the course of his life. Sarah and Emily's betrayal had left a deep wound, but it had also awakened in him a strength he didn't know he possessed. What Jack couldn't imagine at that moment was that this was just the beginning of a story full of unexpected twists. Fate had many surprises in store, both for him and for those who had abandoned him. And Rachel, the kind-hearted nurse, was destined to play a much more important role in his life than either of them could foresee. The months following Sarah and Emily's abandonment were the hardest in Jack's life. Each day was a battle, not only against the cancer consuming his body, but also against the depression threatening to break his spirit. However, in the midst of darkness, Jack found an unexpected light in Rachel, the nurse who had become his unwavering support. Rachel went beyond her professional duties. She spent extra hours by Jack's bedside, reading him books, telling him stories from her life, and most importantly, reminding him that he still had reasons to fight. "You're stronger than this, Mr. Thompson," Rachel would say firmly on days when the pain was unbearable. "Think about all you can still achieve, all the lives you can touch if you overcome this." Slowly, Rachel's words began to sink deep into Jack. With each chemotherapy session, with each night of fever and nausea, Jack clung to the idea of a better future. He was no longer fighting just to survive, but to live fully. Meanwhile, Michael took charge of protecting Jack's legal interests. He managed to freeze part of the assets Sarah had tried to take and prepared a solid defense against the divorce lawsuit. "I won't let them take away what you've built with so much effort," Michael assured his friend. "Sarah will have to answer for her actions." As the months passed, something extraordinary began to happen. The treatment started to show results. The doctors, initially skeptical, now spoke of a possible remission. Jack, who had been on the brink of death, was winning the battle against cancer. One spring afternoon, almost a year after the abandonment, Dr. Johnson entered Jack's room with a smile he couldn't contain. "Mr. Thompson, I have incredible news," announced the doctor. "The latest tests show that the cancer is in remission." "You've beaten the disease!" The room erupted in jubilation. Rachel, who was present, couldn't hold back tears of joy. She hugged Jack, momentarily forgetting professional formality. "You did it, Mr. Thompson. I knew you would," she said between sobs. Jack, overwhelmed with emotion, took Rachel's hands in his. "We did it, Rachel. You were my guardian angel through all of this." At that moment, something changed in the look they shared. It was no longer just gratitude or friendship. It was something deeper, a connection that had blossomed in the midst of adversity. With his health recovering, Jack began to rebuild his life. He returned to his company, which had been kept afloat by his loyal partner, and immersed himself in work with renewed passion. But something had changed in him. He was no longer the man obsessed with material success. Now he valued genuine relationships, inner peace, and the opportunity to help others more. Inspired by his own experience, Jack decided to create a foundation to support cancer patients and their families. And who better to help him in this project than Rachel, who had left her job at the hospital to join Jack's cause. The relationship between Jack and Rachel continued to evolve. What began as a friendship born in adversity transformed into a deep and mature love. Rachel, with her compassion and strength, filled the void Sarah had left, but in a completely different and more authentic way. One night, as they dined on the balcony of Jack's house, with the city lights twinkling below, he took Rachel's hand. "Rachel, these months with you have been the happiest of my life. You've taught me the true meaning of love and unconditional support. Would you do me the honor of marrying me?" With tears in her eyes, Rachel nodded. "Yes, Jack, 1,000 times yes." The kiss that followed sealed a promise of love and companionship that both knew would last a lifetime. What Jack and Rachel didn't know was that, while they celebrated their love and their new life together, thousands of miles away, Sarah and Emily were about to make a decision that would shake the foundations of this new happiness. The past, which Jack thought he had left behind, was about to return with force, bringing with it a storm of emotions and conflicts that would test everything he had built. 3 years had passed since Jack defeated cancer and rebuilt his life. His wedding to Rachel had been an intimate but love-filled celebration, and together they had turned the foundation into a beacon of hope for hundreds of cancer patients. Life was smiling at Jack, and the pain of abandonment had become a distant memory. However, fate had an unexpected twist in store. In a luxurious hotel suite in Paris, Sarah Thompson, now 48, looked out the window with a worried expression. Beside her, Emily, now a 21-year-old young woman, absently flipped through a fashion magazine. "We're running out of money, Emily," Sarah said, breaking the silence. "We need to go back to New York." Emily looked up, surprised. "Go back? But Mom, what's there for us?" Sarah turned, her eyes gleaming with a mixture of desperation and cunning. "Your father, sweetie, or rather his money." "But I thought Dad had died," Emily replied, confused. "That's what we thought, but I've been investigating. Jack survived the cancer, and from what I've found out, he's doing better than ever," Sarah explained. "It's time to claim what's rightfully ours." Emily felt a pang of guilt. For years, her mother had led her to believe that her father had passed away, justifying their flight. Now the truth was coming to light, and with it, an avalanche of conflicting emotions. "Mom, how can you think about that? We abandoned him when he needed us most," Emily protested. Sarah approached her daughter, stroking her hair with false tenderness. "Emily, darling, you were too young to understand. I did what I had to do to protect us. Now, we need to secure our future." Your father owes us this." Once again manipulated by her mother, Emily reluctantly agreed to the plan. 2 weeks later, mother and daughter landed in New York, ready to claim what Sarah considered their right. Meanwhile, in the Foundation's office, Jack and Rachel were discussing plans for a new treatment center when Michael burst into the room, his face pale and worried. "Jack, we have a problem," Michael announced. "Sarah and Emily are back. They're in the city and have filed a lawsuit claiming a substantial part of your assets." The news fell like a bomb. Jack felt the ground moving beneath his feet, while Rachel held him, providing silent support. "How dare they?" Jack muttered, anger and pain mixing in his voice. "After all this time, they come back like this?" Rachel, always the voice of reason, intervened. "Jack, honey, breathe. We'll face this together." Michael nodded. "I've reviewed the lawsuit. It's weak, but we'll have to go to trial. They're claiming that the divorce was never finalized and that Sarah is entitled to half of everything you've built." Jack stood up, walking to the window. His mind was a whirlwind of emotions. On one hand, anger at Sarah's audacity. On the other, renewed pain at the thought of Emily, the daughter he hadn't seen in years. "I want to see them," Jack finally said. "Before this turns into a legal battle, I want to look them in the eye and understand why they're doing this." Rachel and Michael exchanged worried glances. "Jack, I don't think that's a good idea," Michael warned. "Anything you say could be used against you in the trial." But Jack was determined. "I need to do this for my peace of mind. Arrange a meeting, Michael, on neutral ground." The following days were an emotional roller coaster. Jack oscillated between anxiety about the reunion and determination to protect the life he had built with so much effort. Finally, the day of the meeting arrived. In a private room of a downtown hotel, Jack waited with Rachel by his side. When the door opened, time seemed to stand still. Sarah entered first, as beautiful as ever, but with an air of poorly disguised desperation. Behind her, Emily, now a young woman, looked at her father with a mixture of curiosity and remorse. "Hello, Jack," Sarah said, her voice cold and calculating. "It's been a long time." Jack stared at her, searching in vain for some trace of the woman he once loved. Then his gaze fell on Emily, and he felt his heart constrict. "Emily," he whispered, extending a hand towards his daughter. But before Emily could react, Sarah intervened. "We're here on business, Jack. I think you owe us an explanation about our financial situation." The tension in the room was palpable. Rachel squeezed Jack's hand, silently reminding him of her presence and support. "Explanation?" Jack replied, his voice trembling with contained emotion. "I think I'm the one who deserves an explanation. You abandoned me when I needed you most, and now you come back demanding money. How can you justify that?" What followed was a heated discussion, with Sarah defending her actions and Jack exposing the truth of her betrayal. Emily, caught in the middle, watched the exchange with growing horror, beginning to see her mother's manipulation in a new light for the first time. As the meeting unfolded, it became clear that this encounter was just the beginning of a battle that threatened to tear apart not only fortunes, but also the fragile family ties that still persisted. What none of those present could imagine was how this conflict was going to evolve, leading to surprising revelations and decisions that would change their lives forever. The storm was just beginning, and its consequences would shake the foundations of everything they thought they knew about love, loyalty, and redemption. In the days following the tense meeting at the hotel, Jack's life turned into a whirlwind of emotions and legal challenges. Sarah, determined to get what she considered hers, intensified her attack, using every resource at her disposal to pressure Jack. Meanwhile, Emily found herself in an internal conflict. Her father's words during the encounter had sown doubts in her mind about the version of events her mother had told her over the years. Determined to uncover the truth, she began investigating on her own. One afternoon, while Sarah was busy with the lawyers, Emily slipped away to meet with Michael, her father's old friend and lawyer. The meeting, arranged in secret, took place in a small cafe on the outskirts of the city. "Mr. Roberts," Emily began, nervous but determined, "I need to know the truth about what happened when Mom and I left." Michael looked at her with a mixture of compassion and caution. "Emily, are you sure you want to know? The truth can be painful." "I need to know," she insisted. "I've lived too long with doubts and lies." With a sigh, Michael began to recount the events of that fateful period. He told her about Jack's struggle with cancer, how Sarah had emptied the bank accounts, and how they had abandoned Jack in his most vulnerable moment. As Michael spoke, Emily felt her world crumbling. Silent tears ran down her cheeks as the magnitude of her mother's betrayal became evident. "How could I have been so blind?" Emily whispered, more to herself than to Michael. "You were young, Emily," Michael replied gently. "Your mother manipulated you, made you believe what she wanted you to believe." That night, Emily returned to the hotel where she was staying with her mother, her mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions and thoughts. She found Sarah in the suite, reviewing legal documents. "Mom, we need to talk," Emily said, her voice trembling slightly. Sarah looked up, noticing her daughter's serious expression. "What's wrong, honey?" "I know the truth," Emily blurted out. "I know what we did to Dad." The color drained from Sarah's face. "What are you talking about?" "We left Dad when he was dying of cancer. You stole his money and lied to me all these years," Emily accused, her voice rising with each word. Sarah stood up, her expression changing from surprise to cold determination. "I did it to protect us, Emily. Your father was weak. He was going to lose everything. I had to act." "Protect us? You turned us into monsters," Emily shouted. "You made me believe Dad had died. You stole my chance to be with him." The argument quickly escalated. Years of lies and manipulation came to the surface. Emily, for the first time, saw her mother for what she was, a selfish and manipulative woman who had destroyed her family out of greed. "I'm leaving," Emily finally declared, heading to her room to pack her bags. Sarah followed her, panicking. "You can't leave. I need you for this. Without you, I have no case against Jack." These words were the last straw. Emily turned, facing her mother with a look of contempt. "Is that all I am to you, a tool in your plan?" Without waiting for an answer, Emily finished packing and left the suite, leaving Sarah screaming and pleading behind her. With a heavy heart but determined, Emily headed to her father's house. Jack, surprised by the unexpected visit, received her cautiously. "Dad," Emily said, her voice broken with emotion. "I'm so sorry, please forgive me." Jack, seeing the sincerity and pain in his daughter's eyes, felt the wall he had built around his heart begin to crumble. In a moment of shared vulnerability, father and daughter embraced, years of pain and separation dissolving into tears of regret and forgiveness. Rachel, observing the scene from the doorway, felt a mix of emotions. On one hand, joy at seeing Jack reconnecting with his daughter. On the other, a twinge of concern about how this turn of events would affect their life together. Meanwhile, Sarah, alone in the hotel suite, realized that her plan was crumbling. With Emily out of her control, her position in the legal battle was considerably weakened. Desperate, she began to plot a new plan, one that threatened to destroy not only Jack, but also the newly formed reconciliation with Emily. The storm that was approaching promised to be devastating, and no one was prepared for the secrets that were about to come to light, secrets that would change the course of their lives forever. In the days that followed Emily's reconciliation with Jack, the Thompson household became a whirlwind of intense emotions and difficult adjustments. Emily moved into her father's guest room, trying to process everything she had discovered and rebuild her relationship with Jack. Rachel, for her part, did her best to be welcoming and understanding, but she couldn't help feeling a certain uneasiness. Emily's presence had altered the dynamics of their home, and she feared this might affect her relationship with Jack. One night, while Emily was asleep, Rachel found Jack in the study looking at old family photos. "Are you okay, love?" Rachel asked, sitting beside him. Jack looked up, his eyes shining with contained emotion. "It's strange, Rachel. I have my daughter back, something I never thought would happen, but at the same time I feel confused." Rachel took his hand. "It's normal to feel that way. You've been through a lot." "I'm afraid this will change things between us," Jack confessed. "I don't want you to think that—" Rachel interrupted him with a soft kiss. "I love you, Jack. We're in this together no matter what." Meanwhile, Sarah hadn't given up. Desperate and furious at Emily's desertion, she decided to play her last card. She contacted a private investigator, determined to find something, anything she could use against Jack. The investigator, after days of searching, finally handed Sarah information that made her smile maliciously. It was time for her counterattack. One morning, as Jack, Rachel and Emily were having breakfast together, trying to establish a new normal, the doorbell rang. Jack opened the door to find himself face to face with Sarah, who wore a triumphant smile. "Good morning, darling," Sarah said, pushing her way in. "I think it's time we had a family conversation." Emily tensed at seeing her mother, while Rachel moved protectively closer to Jack. "What are you doing here, Sarah?" Jack asked, his voice cold. Sarah sat comfortably on the couch, enjoying the moment. "Oh, I just thought it was time to share some truths. Did you know, Emily, that your father has a secret son?" The silence that followed was deafening. All eyes turned to Jack, whose face had gone pale. "What are you talking about?" Rachel demanded, her voice trembling slightly. Sarah pulled an envelope from her purse and tossed it onto the coffee table. "Here's the proof. A boy, born 7 years ago." "Right after we left, Jack. Seems you didn't waste any time, did you?" Jack, stunned, picked up the envelope with shaking hands. As he opened it and saw the documents inside, his world seemed to come to a halt. I didn't know," he muttered, looking at photos of a boy who was undeniably his. Emily, horrified, looked at her father. "Is it true?" "Do I have a brother?" Rachel moved away from Jack, her face a mask of pain and confusion. "Jack, how could you keep this from me?" "I didn't know," Jack insisted, his voice breaking. "It must have been right before I was diagnosed. I never knew." Sarah watched the scene with satisfaction. Her plan was working perfectly. The unity that Jack, Rachel and Emily had formed was crumbling before her eyes. However, what Sarah didn't expect was Emily's reaction. Instead of joining the general shock, Emily stood up, facing her mother with a look of determination. "Enough, Mom," she said firmly. "You're not going to destroy this family again." Surprised, Sarah momentarily lost her composure. "Emily, can't you see what your father has done to us?" "All I see is a desperate woman trying to manipulate us all," Emily replied. Then, turning to Jack and Rachel, she continued, "Yes, this is a shock, but we can't let it tear us apart. We're stronger than this." Rachel, still stunned, looked at Jack. "Is it true that you didn't know?" Jack nodded, tears in his eyes. "I swear to you, Rachel, I would never have hidden something like this from you." At that moment, Michael, who had been alerted by Rachel about Sarah's unexpected visit, arrived at the house. He quickly assessed the situation and took control. "Sarah, I think it's time for you to leave," he said firmly. "Any future communication will be through the lawyers." As Michael escorted an angry Sarah out of the house, the rest of the family remained in tense silence. The revelation of Jack's secret son had shaken the foundations of their relationship, but Emily's reaction had prevented everything from completely falling apart. Jack, still holding the documents, looked at Rachel and Emily. "We need to talk about this, all of us together, and I think we need to find this boy, my son." The tension in the room was palpable, but there was also a sense of determination. This new revelation could have been designed to separate them, but instead, it was becoming a test of the strength of their newly formed bonds. As they prepared to face this new reality together, none of them could imagine how the search for this unknown child would change their lives forever, bringing with it more surprises and challenges than they could ever have anticipated. The days following Sarah's revelation were a whirlwind of emotions and activity in Jack's house. The news of the existence of an unknown son had shaken the foundations of the newly reunited family, but it had also forged a shared determination to face this new reality together. Jack, with the unwavering support of Rachel and Emily, embarked on the search for his son. Michael used his contacts to hire a trusted private investigator, avoiding any possibility of Sarah interfering in the process. As the investigation progressed, the family dynamics continued to evolve. Emily, determined to make up for lost years, spent long hours with Jack, listening to stories from his childhood and sharing her own experiences. Rachel, although initially shaken by the revelation, found in herself a strength and understanding that she didn't even know she possessed. One afternoon, while Jack and Emily were reviewing old photo albums in the study, Rachel observed them from the doorway, a mixture of love and concern on her face. Emily, noticing her presence, called out to her, "Rachel, come here. I want you to see these photos of Dad when he was young." With a shy smile, Rachel joined them on the couch. Jack put an arm around her, pulling her close. "Thank you," he whispered in her ear. For being here, for everything. Rachel nodded, squeezing his hand in silent response. The scene was interrupted by the sound of the doorbell. Michael entered hurriedly, holding an envelope. "We found him," Michael announced, his voice charged with emotion. Jack's heart skipped a beat. "My son?" Michael nodded, handing him the envelope. "His name is Ethan. He's 7 years old and lives with his mother, Lisa Morgan, in Chicago." With trembling hands, Jack opened the envelope. Inside were photos of a dark-haired boy with familiar eyes, along with detailed reports about his life. He's just like me when I was a kid," Jack murmured, tears welling in his eyes. Emily leaned in to see the photos, a mix of emotions crossing her face. "I have a little brother," she said, her voice a mixture of wonder and joy. Rachel, overcoming her own shock, took Jack's hand. "What do you want to do now?" she asked softly. Jack looked up, his face reflecting determination. "I want to meet him. I want to be part of his life." The following days were a frenzy of preparations. Michael took charge of establishing contact with Lisa Morgan, explaining the situation and arranging a meeting. Jack, meanwhile, struggled with a mix of excitement and anxiety at the prospect of meeting his son. Finally, the day of the trip to Chicago arrived. Jack, Rachel, and Emily boarded the plane together, united in their mutual support and in the uncertainty of what awaited them. Upon arriving at the provided address, Jack paused in front of the door, paralyzed by nervousness. "We're with you," Emily assured him, squeezing his hand. Rachel nodded in silent agreement. With a deep breath, Jack rang the doorbell. Moments later, the door opened, revealing a brown-haired woman with a cautious expression. "Lisa?" Jack asked. She nodded. "You must be Jack," she said, her voice mixing nervousness and a hint of hostility. "Yes, I'm sorry to come like this," Jack began. "I didn't know—" Lisa raised a hand to stop him. "I know. Come in. We have a lot to talk about." As they entered the house, a small boy appeared in the hallway, his large, curious eyes fixed on the newcomers. "Ethan," Lisa called softly. "Come here, sweetie. There's someone I want you to meet." Jack felt his heart stop as he saw his son for the first time. The resemblance was undeniable, and a wave of love and regret washed over him. "Hello, Ethan," he said, kneeling to be at the child's eye level. I'm your dad." Ethan's eyes widened even more, a mixture of confusion and curiosity on his face. "My dad?" he repeated, looking at his mother for confirmation. Lisa nodded, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Yes, sweetie. This is your dad." What followed was a long and emotional conversation. Lisa explained how she had discovered her pregnancy just as Jack disappeared from her life. They'd had a brief romance before he got back together with Sarah. Assuming Jack wanted nothing to do with her or the baby, she decided to raise Ethan alone. Jack, for his part, shared his battle with cancer and how he never knew about Lisa's pregnancy. Mutual understanding began to grow between them, slowly replacing the initial tension. Emily, excited to meet her little brother, soon found herself playing with Ethan in the backyard, while the adults continued their conversation. As the day progressed, it became clear that this meeting was just the beginning of a long process of healing and reconnection. Jack was determined to be part of Ethan's life, and Lisa, though cautious, was willing to give him that opportunity. As they prepared to return to New York, with the promise of regular visits and frequent calls, Jack realized that his family had grown and changed in ways he never would have imagined. He looked at Rachel, who had been a rock of support throughout this process, and at Emily, who was holding her new little brother's hand, and felt a wave of gratitude and love. However, in the midst of this newly discovered happiness, Jack couldn't help but feel a twinge of concern. He knew that Sarah was still out there, plotting her next move. The legal battle wasn't over yet, and now, with Ethan in the picture, the stakes were even higher. What Jack didn't know was that Sarah was already aware of this new development, and she was preparing a plan that would threaten to destroy not only Jack, but his entire newly reunited family. The storm that was approaching promised to be the fiercest yet, and no one was prepared for the dark secrets it was about to unearth. As Jack and his newly expanded family adjusted to their new reality, Sarah was consumed by her own bitterness and thirst for revenge. The news of Ethan's existence and Jack's reconciliation with Emily had pushed her to the brink of desperation. In her hotel suite, Sarah met with her lawyer, a grim-looking man named Robert Davis. "I need something more," Sarah demanded, pacing nervously around the room. "Something that will destroy Jack once and for all." Robert looked at her cautiously. "Mrs. Thompson, I must warn you that we're walking a very fine line here. Any illegal action could—" Sarah cut him off with a brusque gesture. "I don't care. Do whatever is necessary." With a resigned sigh, Robert nodded and left the room, leaving Sarah immersed in her dark thoughts. Meanwhile, at Jack's house, the family was celebrating Rachel's birthday. The living room was filled with laughter and conversation, with Emily helping to decorate and Jack preparing dinner in the kitchen. The doorbell rang and Rachel opened the door to find Ethan and Lisa. "Happy birthday, Rachel," Ethan exclaimed, handing her a handmade gift. Rachel hugged him, touched by the gesture. "Thank you, sweetie. Please come in." The party continued with an atmosphere of warmth and family unity. Jack watched the scene with a full heart. His daughter, his son, the woman he loved, all together and happy. For a moment he felt that everything was finally in its place. However, the peace was short-lived. Jack's phone rang, showing Michael's number. "Jack," Michael's voice sounded urgent, "we have a problem. Sarah has presented new evidence in the case. It's serious." Jack's face paled. "What kind of evidence?" "Documents suggesting embezzlement in your company and the foundation." "Jack, this is serious. If they're real, you could face criminal charges." The news fell like a bomb. Jack excused himself from the party and locked himself in his study, trying to process the information. He knew the accusations were false, but how could he prove it? Rachel, noticing Jack's absence, found him in the study. "What's wrong, love?" she asked, concerned by his expression. Jack told her everything, his voice trembling with rage and fear. "Sarah has crossed the line this time. She's willing to destroy everything." Rachel hugged him tightly. "We'll face this together, all of us." The following days were a whirlwind of activity. Jack and Michael worked tirelessly to disprove the accusations, while Rachel and Emily kept the family together. Lisa, upon learning of the situation, offered her unconditional support. "We're with you in this, Jack," she said, surprising him with her loyalty. Meanwhile, Sarah savored her apparent victory. However, her satisfaction was short-lived. One afternoon, she received an unexpected visit at her hotel. "Mum," Emily's voice startled her. "We need to talk." Sarah turned, surprised to see her daughter. "Emily, darling, have you come to support your mother?" Emily shook her head, her expression serious. "I've come to ask you to stop this. I know you forged those documents." Sarah paled. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I know everything, Mom. I know you hired someone to create those fake documents. I have proof." Sarah's world began to crumble. "How?" "That doesn't matter," Emily interrupted. "What matters is that you have a choice now. You can withdraw the accusations and end this, or I can take this evidence to the police." Sarah collapsed into a chair, the reality of her situation hitting her hard. "Why are you doing this? I'm your mother." "Because it's the right thing to do," Emily replied, her voice firm but compassionate. "Because I want our family to heal, and that includes you, Mum. But first you have to stop this." As Sarah struggled with her decision, across town, Jack received an unexpected call. "Mr. Thompson," an unknown voice sounded on the phone, "I have information about the accusations against you. Information that proves your innocence." Jack's heart raced. "Who are you?" "Someone who was hired to create those fake documents, and someone who can no longer live with that guilt." As Jack listened intently, he realized that the wind was finally turning in his favor. The truth was coming to light, and with it, the hope of a new beginning for everyone. What no one knew was that this revelation would trigger a series of events that would lead to an unexpected climax, one that would change the course of their lives forever and reveal the true meaning of family, forgiveness, and redemption. Events precipitated rapidly following Emily's revelations and the call from the anonymous informant. Jack, armed with irrefutable proof of his innocence, met with his legal team to prepare his defense. Meanwhile, Sarah faced the most difficult decision of her life. Emily's threat to expose her actions had left her with no options. With a heavy heart and wounded pride, she finally decided to withdraw all accusations against Jack. On the morning when the trial was supposed to begin, the courthouse was filled with tension. Jack, Rachel, Emily, and even Lisa with young Ethan were present, united in their support. When Sarah entered, everyone held their breath. To everyone's surprise, Sarah approached the judge and with a trembling voice declared, "Your Honor, I wish to withdraw all charges against Jack Thompson. The accusations were fabricated by me." A murmur of astonishment ran through the room. Jack looked at Sarah, a mixture of relief and confusion on his face. Emily, with tears in her eyes, nodded slightly to her mother, acknowledging her brave decision. The judge, after hearing the statements and reviewing the evidence presented by Jack's team, dismissed the case. "Mr. Thompson, you are free of all charges. This court offers you apologies for the inconvenience caused." As people began to leave the courtroom, Jack approached Sarah, who remained motionless, her gaze lost. "Sarah," he said softly, "thank you for telling the truth." She looked at him, her eyes full of regret. "I'm sorry, Jack, for everything. I was so blinded by bitterness and greed that I lost sight of what really mattered." Emily joined them, hugging her mother. "I'm proud of you, Mom. You did the right thing." Rachel, observing the scene, approached with Ethan by the hand. The boy, oblivious to the complexity of the situation, smiled at everyone. "Can we go get ice cream now?" he asked innocently, provoking laughter that eased the tension. Jack looked at Rachel, who nodded with an understanding smile. "Why don't we all go?" Jack suggested. "I think we have a lot to talk about." And so, the unlikely group, Jack, Rachel, Emily, Sarah, Lisa, and Ethan, headed to a nearby ice cream parlor. As they shared ice cream and conversations, the barriers began to fall. Sarah, for the first time in years, truly listened to her daughter and Jack. She understood the pain she had caused, and although she knew trust would take time to rebuild, she was willing to try. Lisa, who had been a silent spectator to much of the drama, finally spoke up. "I know our situation isn't conventional," she said, looking at Jack and then at Rachel. "But for Ethan's sake, I'd like us to be able to forge some kind of friendly relationship." Rachel took Lisa's hand. "I'd love that," she responded sincerely. As the afternoon progressed, plans began to take shape. Jack and Rachel decided to expand the foundation to include support programs for unconventional families. Emily expressed her desire to study law, inspired by recent events. Sarah, in a gesture of true repentance, offered her business expertise to help with the foundation. As the sun set over the city, the group said goodbye with hugs and promises to stay in touch. Jack, with Rachel by his side, watched as Ethan said goodbye to his new big sister and grandparents. "Who would have thought we'd end up like this?" Jack murmured, squeezing Rachel's hand. She smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. Life has surprising ways of bringing people together. That night, back home, Jack reflected on the incredible journey his life had been. From abandonment and illness to renewed love, unexpected fatherhood and reconciliation. He looked at Rachel, sleeping peacefully beside him, and felt a surge of gratitude. In the months and years that followed, the Thompson family, in all its unconventional forms, flourished. Jack and Rachel finally married in a ceremony filled with love and acceptance. Emily became a successful lawyer, dedicating part of her time to pro bono causes. Sarah, though never again an intimate part of the family, found redemption in her work with the foundation and in her rebuilt relationship with her daughter. Ethan grew up surrounded by love with two mothers, a father, an older sister, and an extended family that defied all conventions. Jack's foundation became a beacon of hope for many, inspiring others to overcome adversities and rebuild their lives. And so, what began as a story of betrayal and pain transformed into a testament to the power of forgiveness, the resilience of the human spirit, and the capacity of love to heal even the deepest wounds. As Jack looked at his family gathered for a Sunday dinner, with laughter and conversations filling the air, he couldn't help but smile. He had been through hell and back, but in the end, he had found something more valuable than any material wealth: a true family, forged in the flames of adversity and united by unconditional love. And at that moment, Jack knew that no matter what the future might hold, they would face any challenge together, stronger and more united than ever.